Yeah, great. Okay, so the promise on the tin was basically to kind of look at this whole area of kind of will, and I suppose it's like Dr. David Hawkins, power versus force. So if anybody hasn't read David Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins, I'd highly recommend giving his stuff a read. He was kind of like very pioneering with kinesiology, and just let someone else in. And you know, kind of the thing with oh yeah, good, excellent. But let me just turn my chat on so I can see what it was. Yeah. It power versus force was something that was quite pivotal in my particular journey. And the thing, I'll just make sure everyone's muted. There we go. Hopefully I'm the only one that's switched on vocally. So the idea really behind his book, I mean, David Hawkins had a very profound awakening, first of all, at a very early age, and then later on in his life, very, very profound awakening, like became an enlightened being. And, you know, people shy away from using those terms, but I'm going straight in there. You know, I fully accept magic. I fully accept enlightenment. I fully accept all of these things. And they are because we make them so. And we make them so because they're wonderful things to have, and they're wonderful things to play with and experiment with. So I don't think we need to shy away from any of these terminologies that kind of, you know, scientifically minded people say, oh, you know, you can't use this word and that word, and you've got to be so careful doing this, everything. So we're not in a space where we need to be careful about anything here. In fact, quite the opposite. And, you know, just on that point, there's a very amazing movement teacher called Ido Portal. And one of the key things that I really loved about an interview that I heard with him a while back was that, like in the fitness industry, and like any industry, whether you're a yoga teacher or any kind of teacher of physical activity, the main focus is always kind of to be very careful not to injure your clients. And, you know, what Ido was saying was that he injures all of his clients. You know, actually, you're not really doing it if you don't get injured being taught by him. So one thing, I promise I won't injure you physically, but, you know, I might inflict one or two kind of like emotional, mental injuries on you. And I feel that that's quite a good thing, because we become so fixed in the way things are supposed to happen, how we're supposed to show up for the world. And really what this is about, this whole message, is that most of the rules that you've heard, most of the things that you've told have been true, are provisional. Now, what do I mean by provisional? It means that we can question them. We don't have to take them as rote, take them as accepted. It means that we have full permission to delve in and question reality in any which way we want to question it. And the field is completely wide open. So in this kind of episode, we were going to look at will and the idea of trying to make something happen versus this idea of surrender, or the possibility of surrender. Now, if you're like most of us, if someone tells you to, like, it's like when you're angry and someone says, oh, look, you know, just calm down. It's not a great strategy for making anything really useful happen. I mean, sometimes if you're a little bit more on the enlightened spectrum, you might be able to just fall into the creative pause and say to yourself, well, okay, yeah, fair enough. I'm overreacting to this situation or whatever. But for the most part, people telling you to calm down, or telling you to, this is how you've got to see something, generally doesn't work. So the idea of surrender in and of itself normally comes as a result of either reaching a point of utter futility, I would call it. So sometimes this has happened, several times in my own experience, where I've literally reached a point where everything just seemed to be collapsing. Everything I did, it was one calamity after another, one disastrous event after another, in business, in relationships, all kinds of different things. And sometimes life will bring you literally to your knees. And the saying goes, when life pushes you down on your knees, just stay there, don't get up. And, just stay right where you are. And it's right at that point that there can be a surrender, an opening. However, I'm not here to tell you that, you've got to reach that point of desperation, because there are other ways that we can play with life, play with reality, to open up things so that we effectively can achieve in the world. We can do things, we can make things happen. We have a volition, and yet we're not, internally stressed. So pretty much every spiritual tradition, including like martial arts and any energy work, one of the key principles that pretty much all of them share is the ability to be incredibly relaxed and centered, and yet achieve outwardly in the physical world, significant things, to have significant strength, significant purpose, significant volition, and be able to exercise what I call true power. Now, the paradox here is that normally true power is understanding that you don't possess power. And in this, there's two ways to look at things. And both of them work, but there's a large cost to one of them. The first way is to try and shift reality to your will. So we each have a will. You could say we're born some people call it an ego, whatever, but we can even go below that and say that there's a certain will, our will to survive, our will to make something happen in the world, a will to reach a particular goal. So we've all seen that in our lives, there are times when it seems like the odds are stacked against us and we can exert our will to make something happen. And sometimes that can be successful and we get the result that we're looking for. However, I would suggest in doing things that way that the cost is an energy cost. So you will be depleting your vital energy as a result of trying to force reality to meet your will. Now, in my own experience and the work that I've been doing over many years, and looking into this idea of energy and intelligence and what I call the light, or guiding principle, or guiding light, there is another way to possess the possibility of creating and doing incredible amounts of what appear actions, things, achievements in the world, but without the depletion of one's vitality, to one's vital force. Now, I alluded to this when I talked about martial arts. Now, this is a great example, or any form of energy work, where it's as if you are gifted the energy to make things happen. Now, one of the things that I teach, which is a fundamental principle that I teach, is to create context. And pretty much when we create context, we're literally bringing something to life in the world. So a context is really a viewpoint or a position that we can inhabit or sit within and look out into the world from that position. And then we can use the context to exercise what I call true power. Now, the rule to this, in fact, I teach this a lot, and there's several things that I give away that just explain this as well. So if you're not getting what I'm saying, just message me and I'll happily share that with you. When I'm talking about creating a context, so for example, let's say I want to create an amazing piece of art that gets out into the world. It's not just for me, it actually has some purpose in the world. It gets out, it may generate money, it may touch, move, and inspire people. But as we know, when you're a creative person, it's often very difficult to break through and make something happen. It seems like there's a lot of hurdles for us to jump over. So if we do it the conventional way, generally, it will make us feel very, very tired. And often we will reach a point where we'll think to ourselves, my goodness, is it really worth all this effort and sacrifice? Now, we've kind of made things like sacrifice, we've kind of given it a kind of elevated status, and suffering and sacrifice and all of these things that go with supposedly achieving things that we want. So I'm going to explore through this idea of context how we don't need to kind of suffer and struggle and deplete our energy in order to make amazing things happen. And here's why. When you create a powerful, life-affirming context from which to explore your reality from, to make something happen from, it's the context that does the work. Now, if that context is a life-affirming context, the magic that comes about is that you, as this seemingly separate entity, are gifted the energy by the intelligence of life. Now, I'll go into that a little bit deeper, because on the surface of things, it sounds, well, look, this is too good to be true. You get to have your cake and eat it. Now, a context is really language. Let's talk about language. So if I'm trying to make something happen, like I was talking about that piece of art, the context that I create for myself, I share my context, is the context of bringing beauty and wonder to life in the world. And another way of looking at this is a mission, a purpose. And then when I talk about purpose, some people run miles. They, oh my God, no, not someone talking about purpose. However, it doesn't really matter how you frame this, as long, whether it's a purpose, whether it's the context, it's like you are taking a stand for this purpose, this context to come to life in the world. So it's a bit like Eckhart Tolle when he discovered that, I can't live with myself. There's an I and the self you can't live with. So in this, there's an I, and there's the context that is, you've created a context which is outside, sits outside of the I. It's an energy that you bring to life. It's a form of magic. It's a form of alchemy, you could say, living alchemy. Now, the thing with a context is you bring it to life through your words and your actions. Okay? So let's take the context of bringing beauty and wonder to life in the world. So when I come to create, I want to create something. Instead of me, little me, trying to force this to happen, I start to delve into the context and I start to say, what needs to happen for this context to flourish in the world? And remember, the context sits as something bigger than the small little self. So when you create a context, it certainly helps if that context is something that will bring good energy to life for other people. So it transcends this small, little, seemingly separate self that isn't really true anyway. So I start to delve into the question, and what's my next move? So I ask the context to show me the next move. And the next move is normally what's in front of me. So often these things can be very, like it may be that your situation is not ideal. It really isn't ideal. And here is the alchemy. The context starts to shape that reality towards its purpose. And you live its purpose. Now, what this means, it's not like a surrender, as in, oh, I'm just surrendering. So people say, look, I need to pay my mortgage. And if people sometimes come to me and say, oh, look, I can't pay my bills. I can't do this. I can't do that. And I'm not telling people, oh, just surrender. Don't worry. Don't pay the bills. Everything's going to be okay. Now, that's kind of sort of stupid, really, isn't it? We all know that. You need to do things in the world. You need to show up. You need to shift atoms in the world. However, I discovered some time ago that I'm not great management material. Now, what I mean by that is that when my little will is trying to make things happen in the world, it's not particularly effective. But the context of bringing beauty and wonder to life in the world, to touch, move, and inspire millions of people. Now that has got energy. You can see the different, like, oh, I want to create a piece of art. I mean, that's not got a lot of oomph behind it. But I want to create a piece of art that brings beauty and wonder to life in the world, touches, moves, and inspires the people that come into contact with it. It's like a piece of spirit technology, you could call it. So the context determines the actions. And the context will always move towards its volition, its realization. So the context, another way of looking at this, is what I call an open question. Now, what's an open question? Seems like an oxymoron. An open question is a question that does not need an answer or demand an answer. So we're taught that we always look, when somebody asks you a question, it's always like you're on the back foot. They've always got to give an answer. But I'm looking at a question in a different way. So I'm looking in this situation, say my situation, whatever it is, my life situation, in this situation, how can my art bring beauty and wonder to life? What's the next move? And the next move is what's right in front of you. But the difference is that it's the context that moves you. And the context, in the form of a life-affirming context, has endless power at its disposal. And people that have tried this, that I've shared this with over the years, some people come back to me and say, oh, it didn't work. So I say, well, how do you know it didn't work? They said, well, I tried it and, you know, I still haven't got any money, or she still doesn't love me, or, you know, all of these things. And I said, look, I guarantee you 1,000% that this works. Go back and continue doing it. Yeah. And then the part of them that says this didn't work is not the context speaking, it's the small, separate, vulnerable little self, always pushed and pulled by situations and circumstances, sort of saying, oh, it didn't work. But a context like, I'm bringing beauty and wonder to life in the world, yeah, that is what's happening. So we come to the next part of this, which is the power of a context combined with the power of declaration. So when I declare that my context is this, I make it so. So a declaration is very different from saying, I'd like to make some more money, or I'd like to be in better physical health, or I would like to, it would be great. I don't want this disease. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I don't want this pain. But when you declare that I'm showing up in this world as a device, a mechanism, a living mechanism to express health, vitality, and a sense of magic in the world. Can you see how that's fundamentally different? It possesses energy. So this whole thing, everything that I talk about, everything I share in my books, in all of the things, everything I do in my art is an energetic game. Now, there's another side to this, another facet. It's like a diamond with beautiful facets. So when you declare something, it's different from just conversational type of language. A declaration. Why do you think in America they have the Declaration of Independence? Not that it's being adhered to at the moment, as we can see, but a declaration is something, it's like a sacred act. It's a powerful, purpose-driven energy when you declare something. So when you declare something, it sets in motion. It starts to shape reality. And it's really the thing that, you know, like when you're a child and you're on these, you know, sometimes these roundabouts and you get off and the roundabout starts spinning quite, you know, if you get off early, you avoid the possibility of being like spun around really fast. but you kind of miss all the fun as well. So when you come back and you say, oh, it hasn't worked, you see, you've got off the roundabout too early. And when you live through a powerful context, you set the context yourself, you create the context as a radical act of creation. It comes from you. You're the artist. You create the context. The context can be just one word. It can be beauty. I'm here to bring beauty to life. Or it can be health. I'm here to express health. Now, you can create the context of health even when you have the outward appearance of sickness. Because, and this isn't mind power either. It goes beyond that. So then every situation that presents itself, you say to yourself, what can I do, or what needs to be done to bring health to life? Do you see what you're doing? You're bringing life to life. And that's our job. That's fundamentally what we're here for. We're here to bring life to life. Now, there's, like I said, there's some other facets to this. Yeah, thank you. Right. The other facet to this is the idea of light. And light is just, it's so misunderstood in our culture. You know, we don't realize that, you know, when people say we're light beings, we literally are. Like the mitochondria communicates using light. Now, I've talked about this before, you know, what we could call easy water, exclusion zone water, the fourth phase of water, how light is creates that to create an electrical charge. So we're basically light and electricity. So we're light beings. That's what life is. Now, light actually sculpts reality. And you can see it in everything. So what's interesting, I actually made some notes here, which I think is probably worth sharing, just to keep myself on track. So yeah, so this was interesting because I mean, I'm probably teaching everybody stuff they already know, but it's just interesting to look at this. Like the mitochondria run on light and magnetism. So magnetism is the other end, another thing that we bring into it. So if you look at the word evil, it's live spelt backwards, yeah? And normally we associate things that are bad with darkness, yeah? So this idea of a lack of light is really a thing. It's not like, you know, this isn't something that is just kind of randomly there. We even say that, you know, I'm in a dark mood. I'm not, you know, that someone, it's like you haven't got enough light. Now, when you start to give yourself the opportunity to metabolize light in a more effective way, you notice on a physical level that you start to have more energy. You bring things to light. And we were talking about this in the last call. Many of the things that in the initial stages of this process that I talk about, this internal light, this source of light, this internal illumination, which is a reflection of the intelligence of light that runs everything. Now, this is within every single human being. It's within animals, it's actually within everything. But the gift of the human experience is that we can recognize, recognitize this experience. We can recognitize, recognize that that is the case with us, that we are that intelligence. It becomes obvious and available once we are willing to place our attention on that inner illumination. Now, the things that will help us to metabolize light is, first of all, our water. So in order to be running on very efficient energy, we need to be drinking very high quality water. And one of the ways is that we can make this water. So you can distill water and then add some minerals back into that if you wish. Even just, I don't think you need to. People argue about this all the time. But having super high quality water, and you can even put crystals in vessels that you drink water from. So you're literally raising the energy of your water. You put intention in water. I always forget his name. It's is it Morato? The water guy. Type it in, someone. Massimo Morato. Anyway, he discovered, Japanese guy, very, very amazing, discovered the, Emoto, that's it. Thank you. I wanted to call it emoji for a minute there. I was like going off course. He discovered that, you could literally program water. Now people say we're 70% water, but actually it's more than that, because as electric beings, obviously water is is fundamental for creating the charge. So we say we're 70% water, but water by the number of molecules is we're kind of 90, because they're very small, we're 99% water, as it turns out. So water is crucial. So if you can increase the quality of your water, and even just buying something like a distiller and distilling your water and then energizing that water with, what he does, he even pins words to it, like love, beauty, wonder, energy, vitality. It's just a form of magic, and of course there's people that just say, oh, that's just nonsense, whatever. But no, I'm absolutely clear that water is a miraculous intelligence that assists. Basically, this is how light works in us. So holy water, yeah, of course, absolutely, yeah. So the light of this water, we turn our water into holy water. Literally, it's like a sacrament to drink water. So you are giving your body light, literally the opportunity to metabolize more light. More light means more energy. Secondly, light in your eyes. So you're literally getting out into the world in sunlight. If there's no sun, there's always light. So you make sure you get out, you get plenty of light coming into your eyes. Now, the other thing you can do is I don't mind how crazy I look, so I'm not bothered. Some people may not want to do this, but literally, if the sun's out, open your mouth and let light come down into your throat and into your body. Expose your body to light. So light, again, some people say to me, oh, what about sunscreen? Look, you just use your intelligence here. You don't want to burn. You just want light. You want light. Okay, you want to eat food that is light rich. So the further away the food goes from its source of light. So if you think about plants, for example, plants use photosynthesis. So they take in carbon dioxide and they turn that into oxygen and sugar. Yeah, so the sunlight hits them. Okay, so the plant absorbs the sunlight, and at the end result of that, it produces sugar and oxygen. Sorry, if I got that wrong. Yeah, sugar and oxygen. So we're the opposite. We eat the food, the plant, the light that's in the plant, for example, and we metabolize that into carbon dioxide and ATP energy. So we create energy from that. Now, it stands to reason that if we eat food that is higher, has a higher light quantity, we are gifted more energy. So we want to set this whole game up. So we're eating food that's infused with life energy, radiant life energy. So what's the most energized food? Well, living food, of course. Food that's alive. So sprouted food, alive food, full of light, full of energy. You're metabolizing the energy, that light energy, and it's alive, it's living. So stuff like that. Now, I'm not here to tell people what dietary preferences they should have. Now, whatever else you do, it is fine. But within that, realize that the further away the food comes from the light source, the more processed it is, the more time it is, the darker it becomes, literally. So we want to set the game up so we have high radiance, high radiant energy. So everything that we can do to bring more light into our being will enhance us and give us more energy. Now, here's the other beautiful part of this magic. We gift that energy back to life. So all of these things that I'm talking about, they're all things for you to play with. They're not impositions. If you don't do them, you know, life will rock on and things will happen. But what I'm talking about here is he's kind of living with a sense of power, immersed in a world of true magic. Now, true magic is when you understand and you can see the dynamics of life. So as the more I've lived like this, I can see energies. They become visible to me. I'm gifted energy to fulfill my mission, the context that I want to express. So this isn't like a passive surrender. It's an artistry. And it's no accident that we call martial arts. It's an art. This is an art of living. So we turn our life into a work of art. And we embrace it on that level. We're not trying to impose our will on life. We literally are a vessel through which life acts. But what we've done, we've been clever and we've put the lens of our context in front of that. So instead of our little struggling will being in front of that, that powerful context is in front. So when life energy comes through that, we are literally moved by the context that we've created. And in that way, we fall into living more like a martial artist. So any skilled martial artist or energy worker will tell you that the power that they possess is given to them. Life lives through them. So that's what we're moving towards. That's what we want. Now, here's the side of it. You start, if you're not used to doing this, you don't just say, oh, I'm going to hand paying my mortgage over to, I'm going to create a context of being rich, and then I'm going to sit there and wait for the context to move me to pay my mortgage. You'll probably discover that your mortgage would bounce. So this isn't about just kind of sitting there and waiting for this is being immersed, involved in your life fully. And what most people are trying to do, they're trying to escape from their life. They're trying to get away from the situations and circumstances. This is a form of alchemy. It turns the situations and circumstances of your life as they are into the possibility of fulfilling the context that you've created. So it turns out that you're in the right place at the right time, and there's no problems or mistakes being where you are, which first of all is kind of a relief. Now, when you see this, and look, you start with the small stuff, yeah. Like you would if you're a toddler, a little toddler. You don't enter the 100 meters Olympics final. You just start walking. You learn. So you start to work with this in areas of your life where you can afford to experiment a little bit. So it might be, okay, I would love to, this is all going to sound so kind of glib and stupid in some ways, but it's like, I'd love to go on holiday. I don't know, something like that. Or, so you start to create things, and you say, how can going on holiday, where could I go that would allow me to bring this context to life? And then you start, where does this context want to go? So where does bringing beauty and wonder to life want to go? So where would I go for that? Okay, so I can tell you because I practice. What is Bali? Bali is a great place because it is beautiful and it is wonderful. So it's a great place to bring. So then I don't know how I'm going to get there. So what's the next move? And the next move is what's in front of you. But do you see how the world changes? So instead of the world showing up as a problem that needs to be solved, the world starts to show up as an opportunity. Your life starts to show up as an opportunity to be embraced. Now, we're taught from a very early age that life is a problem that needs to be solved. Now, I can safely say that the problem of everyone's life is already solved. We're going to die. It's going to end. So the problem's already solved. Yeah. It's what happens in between that. So we have whatever in between that to create with, to bring something to life. Now, our natural state that we're born into, which I call the command, is the way things are. So when we say, this is what life's like, and people will say, life's hard, life's a struggle. You've got, no one gives you anything for nothing. You've got to work for this, and you've got to work hard, and you've got to, all of those things are true within the context of the command. So we say in England, it might not mean anything, there's a saying, you get out for now. So in other words, it's like you don't get anything unless you give something. Well, again, all of these things that we've based more or less our entire freaking life on are assumptions. Unquestioned assumptions determine pretty much most of our lives from start to finish. Now, one of the wonderful things about working with context and working with declaration and working with the possibility of bringing life to life is that you're gifted the opportunity to step outside of those normal world ways of seeing everything. The context will start to shape you into the kind of human being that does what it says it's going to do. And you can see this. There's a great person. I mean, I really like him, actually. He's called Wim Hof, and some of you may already know him. He's called the Iceman, and he's someone that he's an embodiment of everything that I'm talking about. So his thing is ice cold showers, ice cold things, cold and breath. But really beneath all of that, he understands that he is a light being and life is a magical opportunity. And he wants to bring radiant health and vitality and everyone to know who they truly are. He wants to bring that to life. And he is fulfilling a promise. And it was his mother, he thought he was going to die. He was a twin. And it's often with twins, one's left behind. And when he was being born, they didn't have ultrasound and all these kind of things. So he was left in the womb, and his mother said, please pray to God. She was a Christian. Please let him survive, and I'll either make him a preacher, or I can't remember what the other thing was. It's like a preacher or someone who does incredible things in the world. And that promise was somehow gifted to him in the womb, literally. And he was aware of it from a very early age. Piece of magic. So he has been through some incredibly difficult times. And yet for him, going into the cold, he's got all sorts of world records. He's climbed Mount Everest in a pair of shorts and done some amazing things, swum under the sea, the ice and all kinds of things. He's an amazing character. And the thing is, though, he is moved by what he calls his mission. So the context that you create is the power that moves you. All the time your little will is trying to move you, it's going to get whacked off course pretty easily. It's not going to take much. Now, I remember when I was running my design business in London, and I was trying to run that business on self-will, like literally powering this business forward. Nothing's going to stop me. 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 And then I'd get a final demand for a bill that I couldn't pay, and I'd collapse. And then I'd have to get my strength back and grit my teeth and get back into that. It wasn't until I had kind of like a really profound realization of I'm struggling for no good reason with this. and there's another way to do this, that I started to open up to the context of something of astonishment. It was, but so I wanted to bring astonishment to life in the world. I wanted to infuse the world with things that would make take people's breath away, like visual art that would make people go, oh, that was something. I really wanted people to see the power of art. And that started to come alive in me, very alive. And the next time, once that started to come alive, when I got that piece of paper, the final demand or whatever it was, I started to think, fantastic. Yeah, how can this enable me to bring the energy of astonishment to life in the world? Now, people around me sometimes say, oh, you idiot, what are you talking about? Just, you can't pay the bill or whatever it is, how's that? That's not good. But no, it actually started to have an energy that things would show up that would seemingly knock me down, but in the new context, those things showed up as opportunities. So one of the opportunities of not being able to pay the bill was that I asked the question, what would astonishment bring to life in this situation? And it was so wonderful what it brought to life. It said, ask. And that was such an alien concept to me, to ask for what I needed. And there I was, someone who I'm never going to be vulnerable. I'm never going to ask anybody for anything. I know I don't ever want to be seen as someone who's weak. And here that context came alive, and I started to ask. And one of the first people that I asked was the government, the British government. Can you believe it? And it came to my attention that the British government at that time, things have changed, were helping to fund companies that were promoting innovation through technology. And I just sat with that and I thought, ask. That the context of it, astonishment kept saying, ask. And so I wrote a letter to my member of parliament stating how I was in the process of leading art and creativity into innovative areas with technology, and I needed some assistance. He forwarded my letter to an organization that was called the DTI, the Department of Trade and Industry, who gave us a grant of a lot of money, actually. So, point in case, all the time I was trying to fight, I was sweating every little small thing. Yeah. So the other thing that the context will do, again, like working with energy, it starts to slow things down. It starts to show you details of reality that wouldn't normally be available for you to see because you're so tied up in all the little minutiae of just surviving, just getting by, dealing with stuff. So in this way of being, it's a way of being you become aware of the fact that you are a light being. You're made of light, and the light has an intelligence. And the more you can connect with that intelligence of light, there's a trust that comes over. You create the context that allows more of that light, for want of a better way of looking, however you do it, whether it's through art, whether it's through movement, whether it's through finance, whether it's through whatever, more of that light to express itself in the world. And you use your words to declare. So you start to live through the power of declaration. So when you declare something, like I said, it's not like, oh, it means that I am bringing astonishment to life in the world. I am bringing beauty to wonder, life in the world. You are declaring it. It's like a declaration, and you share that declaration. Now, the art of sharing the declaration, it's not like you go around boasting that telling everybody, oh, I'm, this time next year I'm going to be a millionaire, or whatever it might be. No, you use your words and your language like the magic that they contain. So you start to choose your words wisely. And one of the things that really does help this is to notice where life is a complaint. When you notice where life is a complaint, one step, again, onwards or backwards, whichever way you want to look at it, is to notice that as you are in that situation, you are the complaint. You become the complaint. So you're living as a complaint. So this is very, very important. So your language starts to act in a way that weeds out the command language of complaining, of constantly gnawing over what hasn't happened, what didn't happen, what's not right, what he didn't do, she didn't do, should have done. So you start to become precise and economical with your words. Doesn't matter what language you speak, what's your first language, it doesn't make any difference. You become powerful with your words. All of this stuff that I've talked about starts to weave together. It's like a beautiful thread that starts to weave into a fabric, the fabric of your being. And you start to play with life in a very interesting way. And like I said, it's like a revelatory process. It's a revealing. So instead of life getting in the way, life starts to reveal things to you. And you start to notice where this little will is trying to write itself over everything. It's like scribbling over everything because it wants to be significant. It wants to survive. It wants to be recognized. It wants to be acknowledged. It's so vulnerable. But the powerful context you create has no vulnerability. And the more you work with this, what you start to understand is the context that you create, the life-affirming context, is from your true nature. It is your true nature. It's a completely different way of being in the world that doesn't require constant propping up. Now, you know, like everybody, I've come to this. It's taken me, you know, hopefully you get this much quicker than I did. I was slow off the mark. It was like I had to have this bash, you know, I've been studying these. I've been studying consciousness. I've been studying creativity. I've been studying human potential. I've been studying energies. I've been studying shamanism, studied, you know, all of these different things, plant medicines, psychedelics. I mean, 30, 40 years. And it's kind of like, it's not a thing that's, you know, you don't just arrive at this wonderful point. But what I'm saying is that if you take on board what I'm offering here, and it's cheap at the price because it's free, and you just experiment with this, you can't fail to have a better, higher quality of living experience. I defy you not to, I defy anyone to not have a better quality of experience if you take this on. Now, you don't have to. Life will roll around, like I said. But it'll be a little bit more like everybody thinks that the will, the little will that I talk about, thinks it's doing stuff. It thinks it's making stuff happen. But if you zoom out, you'll see it's actually not. It's a bit like a boat that you put on the ocean. And if you just put that boat on the ocean, just like a rowboat or a sail, you know, just simple boat. If you're an observer, if you look at that boat, it looks like there's a lot happening. So the boat comes in and it goes out, then it goes here, then it goes there. The current moves it here, moves it there, does this, does that. So if you're observing that boat, you're going to say, wow, that boat, that's doing a lot of stuff. But the boat's not doing anything. And that's what pretty much how we show up in the world. We're the boat. We're the little boat with no, and life is just moving us. Situations and circumstances are just moving us hither and thither, and we have no real power. When we create the context for our life and we declare that to the world, to reality, it's a little bit like starting to put a rudder in the boat. So you start to be able to actually steer the boat. But then it's not even, you know, it's even more subtle than that. You're not the little person trying to steer the boat here and there, yeah? You see things that are interesting and wonderful, places to explore. And you can point the boat towards those. The context points the boat towards those things. It's a directional possibility. So this is really the difference between surrender and using one's will. So the surrender is saying, I'm willing to gift my life to this context, this possibility, this mission, this purpose. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to talk about it. You could say, well, I start to live a purpose-driven life. Okay. But it doesn't matter how we start to use semantics to go around this, yeah? What I'm saying, if you haven't got a higher principle, and you think, I can't even, some people say, oh, you know, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. How do I even find that? And the answer to that is easy. The answer to that is that you make something up that would be really bloody exciting to live by. And you sit in that as an open question, and you start to ride through life in that vehicle. And I guarantee that if that is not your mission, your purpose will start to show up in that vehicle. So it's just something to get you to something else. But in the meantime, you're still living in the world on purpose with power. So do you see what I mean? This way of, we're playing with life. We're not trying to force life to do things. Where life shows up as something to be played with. We have an opportunity. Now, it doesn't mean it's all kind of unicorns and rainbows. Tough decisions will show up. Difficult choices will arise. Discomfort will inevitably present itself. But within that, if the context that you create, the powerful life-affirming context you create, determines the action, the context determines the conversation. So you hand your life over to a power greater than self. Sounds like AA, doesn't it? So you could call the context, some might say, well, the context is God. Because the context is bringing life to life, bringing more light into the world. And that's what you're about. So when you are infused with light and you recognize that, and the more you practice this, the more you go along with it, the more things are revealed, until the point where you start to understand the dynamics of the world. Yeah. I like that. Free energy comes from that level of reality. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking about free energy. You know, there's a lot of things about the, you know, kind of perpetual energy machines. And kind of in a way, we kind of are, you could say, anti-entropic, because, you know, the law of entropy, if you could believe that, there's no law of it, but the made-up law of entropy says that everything goes from a, you know, kind of a high state to a lower state. And we're kind of reversing that. We're saying, well, look, you know, I'm going from a low state to a high state. We're going the other way. So it's anti-entropic. So on all levels, we can say, well, look, with age, I flourish more. I had more energy. The upward spiral, exactly. As life becomes difficult, the context I create starts to shape that into possibilities and opportunities. And that sounds like a load of new age crap on the surface of things, unless you actually live it. If you just give it lip service and turn it into an intellectual exercise, it's a load of new age crap, what I'm talking. If you live it, and you really live it, and you step into it wholeheartedly, then it becomes alchemy and magic. But there's kind of a fine scrim between alchemy and magic and new age claptrap. Because you can read every book, you can read every teaching, you can attend every lecture, you can do all the right things, you can do all the right kind of, you know, breathing exercises and all of the right things. But unless you kind of hand yourself over to this process. And the handing over is kind of like a sacred act. It's something that you are gifting life. You gift your life to life. You bring life to life, but you gift your life to life. Who better to gift it to? Now, some people say, I gift my life to God. Fine. We're talking about the same thing. I give my life to wonder. I give my life to magic. I give my life to energy. I give my life to light. But for heaven's sake, give it to something that's worth the giving it to. If you're giving your energy to little stupid niggly shit that is just going to make you upset and miserable, you're gifting that your energy. And here's the deal. When you gift your energy to that, it's hungry for that energy. It's going to come for more and more and more and more. And you're going to get weaker and weaker and weaker and tireder and tireder and tireder. That's why people need need 8, 10, 12 hours sleep. When you live like this, you actually don't need sleep, like I was talking about last week, but even just food. When you live like this, you don't need much food either. In fact, there can come a point where you hardly need any food because you're living from energy. Now, I'm not advocating that anybody should go out and do that, but I'm just saying that we are handed a particular way of living and we accept it as truth. So we come all the way back to the beginning of this. When we accept what we're given, then we have to swallow what we're given. When we start to open up to different possibilities and question that, but not question it in a kind of antagonistic way, we question it in a way with a desire to experience a higher quality of being, a higher quality of existence. And we come at it from a position of saying, my life, this energy, I'm gifting this energy because it's all going to go back anyway. Like I said, all our problems are solved the minute we're born. We're just, the thing is that we've just got this bit in the middle to kind of endure through. And I'm saying we weren't put here to suffer through life. Now, all of the suffering that we see in the world, all of the misery, so much of not all of it maybe, but so much of the disease, discomfort, war, violence, all comes as a result of not knowing who we are. When you know who you are, when you know that you are this magical, beautiful intelligence and everybody else is everything else is, then the move is to create with it, to bring a sense of this to life in the world. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be out there sort of like, handing stuff out to underprivileged children. It may turn up like that, but it may also show up as you living a life that is fulfilled in different ways. So it doesn't have to, this is the other thing. It's like you don't become a sanctimonious do-gooder. You become an actualized human being, doing what you are most equipped to do as an actualized human being. If that's creating art, that's creating art. If that's rescuing children from war zones, that's rescuing children. If it's stopping people overfishing the ocean, it's stopping people overfishing the ocean. If it's creating music, it's creating music. If it's helping people solve their financial problems, it's helping people. It's like whatever that shapes you into, that energy of life, your potential, what you become potentialized as. It takes all, this is the beauty, where they're all these different forms, yeah? Now, I talk a lot more about this. If you go on my YouTube, you'll see some of my other videos. I talk about all of these different things in depth sometimes. And in some ways, this is all so simple. And I say it's simple, but not easy, of course. But the first thing is to acknowledge that the way that you're living is a predetermined assumption. It's pre-given. It's already, you already show up into this way of being. And like Uncle Tom Shack in Huckleberry Finn, your personality, the thing that you treasure so much, has been just put together by situations and circumstances beyond your control. No, you're the boat, being the tide going out, tide coming in, rip tide going that way or current going that way, the wind blowing. It looks like lots happening, but really you didn't decide any of those things. Yeah, so this is just an opportunity, if nothing more, to notice that you are not living your, something else is living your life. And I'm going to suggest that the thing that's living your life is not something that's going to gift you radiant, wonderful joy, ecstasy. It's going to just get you surviving, because that's what it's designed to do, to just keep you survive. You'll just survive. And some people seem to survive slightly better than other people. And some people don't seem to survive at all, even though they've done their best to. So that's what you're born into. This, in a way, is kind of the ejector seat to offer up a possibility of living in a different way. But it starts off with noticing that, in a way, the way you are, the way you appear to be, is a construction. It's a constructed entity. And there's many other possibilities for existing. There's many other possibilities for consciousness. There's many other possibilities for vision. There's many other experiential facets that we haven't even dipped into as human beings. We are capable of so much more than the prescription that we're given. And this is kind of, if nothing else, this is an invitation to see that you were an already set up set of circumstances and possibilities. In fact, actually, it wasn't possibilities, it's just options. More and more options, no possibilities. Yeah, no possibility of being outside of the framework of the command culture that you're born into. This is a way of getting out of that, but not fighting your way out of it. You literally, you work a piece of magic in creating the context. The context is you create is a piece of creative magic, piece of creative alchemy. That you literally, you disappear from the prescribed, you don't break out from it. You don't have to escape from jail. You literally vanish from that. You vanish. And the world starts to show up as something fundamentally different. The world becomes alive. As you become more alive, the world becomes more alive in response. For most people, the world's kind of dead. And they're kind of dead. And the opportunity is, you come alive, the world comes alive. So I could go on, but I won't. But what I will do, I'll just just see if there's has anyone got a question about anything that I've said, even though it's a lot. So if you have got no questions, I'll hit the go button and we're done. If anyone's got a question, let me know. Anything. Okay, so that's when you change the way you see the world you see changes. Is that a statement or a question? But does the world change? Yeah, I mean, it kind of like it really is. You literally see through different eyes. You're looking out onto the world, and it has a different quality to it as a result of working this way. And all the same things tend to show up to begin with, but over time, those things that would normally just keep niggling away start to resolve themselves. There's a resolution to those things. And also there's this thing of stopping to fight against life. You realize that life in and of itself, energy of life, is intelligent, and it's living through you, it's working through you. And there's this kind of trust in things so you trust things. It's not blind faith. It's a trust in something that actually earns the trust, because the quality of your experience defines how much you can trust that thing. So, okay, your question. Okay, yeah, what that's a good question. What causes the control? What causes the command? Well, I suppose you could say that, I mean, I don't know. It's the absolute truth of the answer for me. It seems to be that through no fault of our own, the human condition, whether it's through evolutionary circumstances, has demanded a certain orientation to the world. And over time, that orientation, that initial orientation of survival, has mutated and become something in and of itself. So when I say it is living your life, it's like it's kind of anthropomorphizing it, but it seems to have a characteristic of its own, this survival. And it shows up as the way things are. Now, over time, you could say, well, look, we don't need to be worried about starving. Most of the Western world doesn't. I mean, a huge proportion of the world still does. But in the West, you could say we don't need to kind of starve. But nevertheless, we still adopt the orientation to life as if we're under threat all the time. Now, I would question even the way we've been taught to see evolution. So I would say that there were civilizations, there were cultures, there were even races of human beings that lived very much like what I'm describing here. In other words, they were very much in tune with this radiant nature of light, radiant nature of intelligence, and they were less self-centered. So the self, you could say, even this coagulation of this small self into what appears to be a separate entity is part of the survival mechanism. Somehow nature thought, well, if we're separate, it seems like we can all sort of I don't know, there's some kind of survival mechanism in that as well. I mean, anthropologists or neuroscientists and all of these biologists might tell you something along those lines. Yeah. Well, you see, the thing is that we're not exposed to this way of thinking because it's so entrenched in our way of being that it's kind of like a radical act. Like, you know, I teach this to my daughter, and, you know, I can see that there's, when she was very young, there was a real openness to it, but I can see that there's a beginning of a resistance to that now as the culture starts to close in more. The system starts to demand certain ways of being in the world, to kind of to not encourage, yeah, the demiurge, yeah. Exactly. I mean, another way, you know, there's many ways of looking at it. Some people call it, is it Morlock? You know, this idea of the kind of the monster enveloping us, the fall from Eden, you know, the fall from grace, the expulsion from the Eden. Now, whichever way we look at this, I mean, there's many different metaphors and ways that we could look at this, but the best way to look at it is through your own life. So we could zoom back in history and say, well, of course, there were other languages that more like singing, and they didn't demand all these, didn't have these ways of working with things. But to just look at stay with your own experience. And you can see from your own experience that entire trajectory of the command history. It shows up within your own experience as it is. And you can see it in act. That's it in action. The small self, anxious, worried, wanting to be master of the universe, is how it shows up. So bring your attention to your own sense of being. Notice that there's a part of you that is always present, always radiant. Bring your attention to that, and then that will start to expose more and more the command little self that's created, the survival self. So, like I said, this is a revelatory process. You know, I'm not here to present kind of answers in that sense. You know, everything's an exploration. So you can, the more you experiment with this, maybe you can come back and tell me, I don't know, but just in my own experience, I've noticed that certain fundamental shifts have taken place that have allowed me to move through the world in a fundamentally different way, to show up for life. Doesn't mean that everything goes the way I want it to go. However, it goes the way my context moves me through life. Yeah, I'm absolved of the burden of trying to solve the riddle of my life, instead of which I'm fully in the adventure of it. So that's how things manifest when you start to work like this. And it's all, like I said, you know, it's a verb, not a noun. There's no actual destination to go with this. It's just a matter of living it. So okay, look, I think I'm going to end it there, guys. It's been a long one. But thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Hey, great pleasure. Lovely to see
Thank
you.
you.
Aha.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. I took lots of notes.
Yeah, there's lots. Brilliant.
Thank you. That art behind you is gorgeous, by the way. I can't stop looking at it. It's like you have an art halo.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Piece of shamanic art.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, look, see you again
Thank
soon, guys. I should be here next week. The alien card is up there. Thank you, Nathan Lee. Brilliant.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Take
Aloha.
care. Bye.
Aloha.
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 Shaka bra.
Bye.
Ja, Shakabra. Ci sta.